everybody. Welcome. We're just going to allow for people to come in slowly but surely at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for making it. Glenna, I think I've seen you on other calls as well. Omang, welcome. If you guys want to pop in where you're joining us from in the chat, we have Ben from Denver and Mark. Where are you located again?
I'm in Chicago.
Chicago. Paris. Oh, love Paris. Dublin. Oh, not too far. I'm in London. Awesome. Santa Cruz. Lovely. All right, we're just going to give it 2 more minutes for people to start joining. Umang. Oh, you're in India. Oh, lovely. I love Indian food. It's my favorite. Huge Indian community here in London.
What's your go-to Indian dish?
Oh, I love bindi masala, which is like okra. And it's like tomato, onion, and just like super spicy, curried up. That's my favorite. I love it. I love every vegetable dish. The only thing I won't eat is like any cheese dishes. Not my favorite.
We got Mumbai. I'm going to Sri Lanka next month.
Also divine. The food is so good. Spicy. Spicier than anything I've ever eaten. Okay, I think we can start to kick things off and allow people as they come in, and I'll be adding everybody in. So you guys might see that as hosts and co-hosts popping up on your screen, but you'll just see me add people through. Welcome. Kevin, do you want to say a few words to say hello?
It's great to see some familiar faces. I like these quaint, like smaller events sometimes. We have Mark, who's a Hubble expert. Mark's incredible in sales and just a good guy. He shows up every day, super consistent. And I am excited to be a fly on the wall today because I don't know the whole backstory about how Ben and Mark met. I know they met on the platform on a Hubble call, but a deal then came out of it. And so all these success stories that come as a result of Hubble gets our team excited. The whole reason we launched the platform was to see other founders be more successful, get connected with people otherwise they would have never had a chance to. We got people in Paris and Dublin and in Mumbai. Mark lives in Chicago. When would someone from India ever meet someone from Chicago? Things like this. So yeah, we do these calls, usually these events around once a month, sometimes more. But they're really all about just trying to provide value for the people that are in the audience. You'll also have a chance to connect with Mark. He has a Hubble link. We'll be dropping that in. And excited to listen to this story today.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks again for making time today. Just met our founder of Hubble, Kevin, and today's conversation is really the exact kind of story that we hope this platform would end up enabling. A founder had an opportunity, not a theoretical problem and not a long-term consulting initiative, more of like a real deal in motion. He needed experience, perspective, quickly. And through Hubble, he connected with Mark for a short call. It helped him really reshape how he approached the opportunity, and it contributed to closing a 75K engagement. So today we're going to unpack why fast access and expertise matters so much right now, how they found each other, which I think is just probably the cherry on top to this story, and what happened during and after the first conversation. Mark, Ben, thank you so much for being here and welcome. Mark, before we get into Ben's story, I'd love for you to give a little context on your background and how you ended up at Hubble.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks everybody for joining. So I've spent 4 decades in enterprise software sales. My last role spent 5 years running global sales for enterprise cybersecurity product within HCL out of Noida. So that's my Indian connection. And throughout that time and throughout my entire career, recognized that The people who find you are rarely the ones who fund you. I'll let that sink in for a moment because if you're selling to B2B, whether it's you're a commercial roofer or you're selling to the office manager, somebody has to go sell to an executive internally when you're not in the room. So I spend my time now for the last 3 years coaching founders and sellers on doing just that, equipping them to sell internally when we're not in the room, strengthening their executive business cases, navigating complex buying environments. And it doesn't have to be a large enterprise. It might be, them selling into a smaller organization, but there's just times when your champion, has to communicate in terms they may not be familiar with. And the only terms that matter to executives are increased revenue, reduce cost, and lower risk. So that's what I do is I help partners or I help founders get there. And what I loved about Hubble was prior to engaging with Hubble, all of my engagements were monthly retainers, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. But in sales, not every call requires uh, a lengthy engagement. Sometimes all somebody needs is a 15-minute call in prep or in defense of something or to find a competitive piece of information or to just help with doing like an AI prompt that's going to help them. Well, that's what Hubble gave me. So I just found it to be a perfect fit for me.
Kat, you're on mute.
Thank you. Ben, would love to follow in with how you found Hubble.
Yeah. Well, hey everyone, my name is Ben. I'm the founder of Margo. I'm excited to be here. I'm probably Hubble's biggest fan. I've been on like all these calls and yeah, I've probably worked with 4 or 5 people on Hubble. So I seriously love the platform. Yeah, so I found it initially through LinkedIn, very new to this tech world. I started out doing like woodworking and photography and just random things. And so Hubble has kind of been my avenue into learning about this world. I didn't know about how investing works. I didn't know about how to build these relationships, sales, customers. There's so many things that are like completely new to me. And through conversations and these Hubble calls, I've started that process of learning and gotten the business underway. And last week's call was going 0 to 1 and kind of like going all in on your business. That was a really awesome call. And I think it's on YouTube. I don't know, Kat, maybe you could speak to that, but
Yeah.
that's like right where I'm at right now because I just left my other job to go all in on this. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to share the story of how Mark and I connected and where the business is at.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and background uh, on your company.
So without going too far into the weeds on the industry, I'll spend a minute just explaining. It's in the construction world, you have general contractors who need to hire subcontractors to get something built. And often it's like 25 different subcontractors. And in order for the general contractor to put together a proposal for the owner, they need 3 bids per trade. So they're from 75 companies, they need bids, which is a huge coordination process. And there's kind of a moving target as you're collecting these bids as the drawings change. And so the tool automates that and is trying to solve the coordination problem. I don't know if any of that landed for people not in construction, but that's my best effort at a 1 minute spiel.
I'm not in construction, but it made absolute sense. So you did
Okay.
a very good job. Mark, would love to hear what did you notice quickly during that first conversation with Ben?
Um, yeah, good question. So, but you know what? I'd also like to ask Ben. So, Ben, something that I don't know. How did you find me on Hubble? There's a lot of different experts who offer lots of different skills. How'd you find me?
Yeah, I think Hubble has on their homepage, I think you guys have a variety of categories. And at the time, I really needed help with sales in particular because I was at a point where I was about to do a consulting visit. And I think your description was spot on with what I was looking for in terms of somebody who could help with enterprise sales. Versus there's a lot of VCs and people have other expertise on there.
Yeah, awesome. So it's working. That's good. So Kat, you asked, what did I find in the first call with Ben? So really, really, and now I have to suck up a little bit, but he was a really, really nice person. So we started off, we had a great conversation. We talked about some other things. But when we started talking about business, it was a fairly consistent conversation I've had with a lot of founders and sellers. And one of the things that I've learned is that in B2B deals, most of them don't fail because the product or the service is weak. They usually stall because the founder or the rep is selling the shovel and not the whole. In Ben's case, we were focused on the processes that his customer wanted to optimize, and it kept coming back to what he was going to say or what he was going to sell. And Ben, I think you would agree with me. I kind of abruptly changed things so that we were focused on equipping the champion with a business story that the executive would find very easy to approve. So we quickly got into the operational efficiencies, the outcomes, how that would impact the business, how it's currently impacting the business, how the desired outcomes would impact the business in terms of increasing revenue, reducing costs, lowering risk, and then how to help their champion translate that into language instead of features. I think just to put a bow on it, we landed on a set of discovery questions for Ben to go back to his customer with and discuss how his offering would help them improve their business as opposed to just selling them software.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, I can kind of add to that story. At the time of calling Mark, I had done 4 or 5 calls with this company, and they were all process focused. So we were talking about how do we, across all of these different processes, find little ways to improve efficiency. I was kind of doing consulting at the time versus I had a finished product that I was selling. And so I was about to do an on-site visit. The company was out of state. And I called Mark thinking like, okay, how do I structure these 2 days together to get the most out of it? And going into the call with Mark, I think it was in my head, I was thinking more about how do I tell them this is the change that's going to happen with the new process. And Mark shifted it to no, you need to keep asking questions to uncover how many hours does this process take? What's the potential unlock in revenue? And so that's what I spent the 2 days doing, was focusing on extracting more information versus me going in saying I have the answers and this is the solution and this is how we're going to implement it. I think that was the big unlock.
What
Yeah.
was the biggest unlock that you found?
Well, the specific thing that happened was so in the process, like I described, of collecting these bids, we figured out how long it takes. And then I kept asking more questions like, okay, how many of these bids do you have a year? What's your win rate on these bids? What's the margin on the bids? And we got to all the variables. And it was like in this end meeting that we had where they actually did the math for me. So instead of with these variables, we could unlock this much revenue, they, with all the variables, determined what that equation was. And they showed me what the potential value unlock was. So that was like the aha moment for them where it clicked like, okay, that's a really good idea to move forward. So
Can I
Yeah,
say
so
something on this really quick? Ben, I just want to commend you for like being coachable and like taking this approach, so many people in the world, especially when you're a founder, like you're just trying to figure it out. And I think so many people overcompensate and feel like I have to have all the answers. I got to be the smartest guy in the room. My product has to have all the features under the sun. And whether you're like pitching for an enterprise deal like this that you end up getting, or you're like pitching an investor, just honesty and asking questions and being able to like figure it out and just get it right. Not be right day one, but just get it right over time. This sort of attitude is anytime I see somebody that's talking like this, I just always kind of try to stop them and say, kudos, man.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thanks.
I would also comment. So not only was Ben uh, coachable, but he was well armed to go into a room, establish trust, earn their confidence, because he was only there to help improve the business. He wasn't there trying to be assertive and abrasive and pushy and they gave him the numbers. And I think it was in excess of like $2 million in leakage and in cost overages. So if you do the math, your deal was $75,000 to them. They built the business case about $2.5 million. That's called good business. So it was easy to bring the decision owners a decision memo saying, look, if we invest $75,000, we're going to save 2.5 million. That's good business. So I too commend you. I think you did a brilliant job.
Well, sweet. Thanks. I think I know there's a Q&A at the end, but I actually have a question I think it would be helpful here is for people who do have a product, how do you navigate those situations? Because I think it was easier for me to be open-ended when I didn't have a fixed thing that now I'm trying to scale. And so I think for a lot of people who have that product, Kevin, you're talking about not going in there with the answers. Well, now I'm almost in this place where I do feel like I have an answer that worked for somebody. Um, and so in
Yeah.
an enterprise sales cycle, how do you guys approach that?
It's questions. It's always questions. Um, how are you currently doing something today? What's the business impact of that? Ultimately, what we need to get to is determining that the cost of inaction or the cost of the current solution is more expensive than change, right? Change is difficult in an organization. So we have to show somebody that we can help them manage the risk of change. But in a business case, we've got to understand what are they trying to do as an organization? How are they currently addressing some of these processes? You mentioned estimating. We're working another deal without getting in details, um, where you've got a client who wants to free up an individual for higher value projects while automating the current processes using your technology. It really comes down to what's the cost of doing it today? What are the desired outcomes that they want to see in terms of reduced cost, increased revenue, reduce leakage, reduce risk? It's all questions.
And one more thing is we think about like I've never sold an enterprise product like you. So I don't have tons of like expertise there, but I think there's so much crossover whether you're building for consumers or companies. Like you build something, I think a lot of founders think, I'm going to build something for everybody. Like I want to build something that a million people love, right? This is like the first thought. I think it goes through everyone's mind, right? Because this is like your big vision and your goal. And one day you'll get there. But like, how about we just build something that one person really loves, one company really loves, and one consumer really loves. And then once we have one person that loves it, then we can build something that two people love, and it's this iterative process. And if we just kind of focus on not building something that 10,000 people kind of like, but yet like 10 people truly love, that is what is special. This is what eventually is going to allow you to raise capital and grow your team and get resources and get closer to that longer term vision.
Yeah. And Kevin, I think you're touching upon it, but a lot of this is about storytelling, how you tell the story, as opposed to selling features and, walking through your website and capabilities. But to the degree that you can tell a story that resonates uh, emotionally, operationally, and financially, what you're doing is you're equipping the people who are going to sell your offering. When you're not in the room, you're giving them the words to use internally.
And early on, most people don't care about your features anyways,
Right.
or your product a whole lot.
From an investor standpoint.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect time for me to jump in with something that Mark says a lot about helping champions sell internally. I'd love for you to kind of walk us through what that means and explain that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. So throughout my career, at some point in time, I told it up that I've sold or I've helped General Motors buy. Nobody wants to be sold to, so I helped them buy. I've helped General Motors buy in excess of $100 million worth of software. I can promise you, I've never met the senior most executives at General Motors, and I probably never will. So you have to become very, very comfortable at some point that in a B2B sale, whether, and I have clients, I mentioned commercial roofing before. I have clients that are uh, commercial roofers where somebody contacted me and said that their roofers go out and they walk a roof, they take pictures, they hand somebody a price quote, and they hope for the best, and that's not working. So what I helped them do was not only take pictures, but also put together, well, what's the impact of water on a roof, right? Everybody can relate to the fact that there might be mold remediation costs. There might be assets that are getting wet. There might be tenants that are going to slip and fall. These are the words that the building owner cares about. So in that case, we have to equip an office manager to sell internally. It's the same thing with AI, same thing with cybersecurity, same thing no matter what you're selling to an organization. If there's multiple people involved, we have to equip the people to sell us internally when we're not in the room. Your champion may love your solution, but they have to walk into rooms that we're not in: finance, procurement, operations, executive boards, and they have to explain why change, why now, what happens if nothing changes. And by the way, all of this has to resolve into math. That's how businesses run, unless you're a nonprofit. Everything has to result in quantifiable uh, increases or decreases. And that's when the CFO or finance looks at the projects that are currently funded and make the decision. All right, you want us to spend this money to do this? What don't you want us to do? These are already budgeted. So if a project is going to help improve the business more so than another project, that's called, you know, that's just allocation of capital, reallocation of capital. Happens all the time. The key is helping that champion build the business case that's going to get the executive's attention and do so in a forwardable, irresistible manner. And that's what I've done throughout my career. That's exactly what what Ben did with his client and what all my clients do.
Ben, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts.
I had a question come to mind on that, where I think what I've learned in some of these other sales cycles that I've started is in enterprises versus consumer products, there is a resistance to change where for you equip that champion with the number, but now they're risking their reputation if they push this forward. So I don't know if Mark, you had any thoughts on we've figured out what the business case is, we've equipped them with the numbers. Now, how do you take that next step of really moving it through the organization where they're willing to risk their
Yeah,
reputation?
it's kind of a layup question. You know that. I wrote a book on this topic called "When Deals Go Quiet," and it's the epitome of decision readiness. You can have a lot of people interested in your solution, and nothing happens until an individual, a person, typically an executive, is willing to own the decision to change. That means they've identified or that means that they believe in the technical advocate who's going to see this through to adoption, not just purchase, but adoption, because nobody needs any more shelfware. They've identified somebody in the business who can deliver on the ROI and the desired outcomes. They've confirmed that all the stakeholders are aligned: security, procurement, legal. Now there's AI committees. Are we on the committee meeting that's coming up? When do they meet? And then lastly, is the team running this as a project with actions owners and accountability dates, go live dates? So once an individual has all that, they have what they need to make a decision. And uh, really, what it comes down to is helping them manage the risk of change. A lot of people call me all the time and tell me, "Oh, Mark, this deal's gone quiet. This deal's stalled." Well, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. Maybe they're just not ready to speak with you about the internal uh, mechanics and politics that are going on. Rarely do late stage deals go quiet because you're just not the solution of choice. Life happens. Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe there's an illness. But somebody is responsible for carrying this forward to improve the business if you've put the best business case together. So, you know, just to put a bow on it, what you're looking for is somebody who is going to own that decision and making it Sesame Street simple for them to do so.
Interesting. Yeah. And also, I have a question because I have in another lifetime cybersecurity, and I worked with a lot of different value added resellers. So, like the Oktas, CrowdStrikes of the world.
Yeah,
And usually, the biggest problem, like you said, you might not meet the CISO, which is a chief information security officer, straight off the bat. But how do you get buy in? And I know it's building out the whole use case, but like, where would you start within the organization? Who do you
sure.
think, yeah, I guess title is the most important to target?
Well, if you're selling cybersecurity, you want to start with the CISO's office, talking to security analysts. But that that's that's who everybody is pestering. I'll share with you, I've had the most success, um, and I've always been the top performer in every company that I've worked with. I've participated in 3 IPOs and 7 acquisitions. Those are vanity numbers. But where it matters is the way that I've helped my clients. And in so many cases, where I started was with an enterprise architect, no decision making capability, no budget, but knowledge about everything that's happening in the organization. So if you can provide to him or her a solution that offers the fastest ability to reduce an attack surface, reduce the number of vulnerabilities that somebody has to remediate, keep the organization out of the newspaper for the wrong reasons. If you can help them do that with the least infrastructure possible, the fewest number of agents, the most integrations that are built out of the box. There's times to talk tech, and then there's times to talk tech as it relates to the business. So I do prescribe to having a big network within the organization where everybody's talking about me. So security analysts, the IT ops people, the compliance team, chief compliance officers, because a lot of the security products that are out there, they're also helping with compliance. Just because you're compliant doesn't mean you're secure. But when you're secure, you're typically compliant because the tools facilitate things like, PCI compliance and CCPA and other mandates. So I think it really comes down to who is going to who's going to appreciate how you can help them not work the weekends and get more done with less?
Yeah, I guess across organizations, right? Because we have people where I perfectly understand the cybersecurity side, but maybe somebody in selling AI. So I know I saw Benjamin jumped on the call, and he was super excited, one of our experts, to be on this call. But anybody selling a different type of solution, who are those besides that big champion? Who are the people within the organization? And you answered that perfectly. It's basically the people that are day to day dealing with the issues and can champion you in to the people that are going to make the purchasing decisions.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you don't underestimate the influence that somebody has. Security is the biggest one. So there's no software that's going into an organization at scale that doesn't go through a security audit these days. And thankfully for that, right? Used to be the case where everybody was building shadow systems and just everybody's creating their own thing. The internet didn't help things where all of a sudden people could just go to a browser and use Salesforce or other applications, and security went nuts. This is why we went through so many ransomware attacks and continue to do so. So governance needs to be a part of all these evaluations. You just can't underestimate who's going to potentially say no. You might know who can ultimately want you and say yes, but there's always somebody who who can say no. The key is, and this is what we do a lot in our short calls on Hubble, is we I look for blind spots. I'm not there to attack anybody, but boy, I don't want you walking in and getting attacked. So I'll ask some hard questions and we'll pull the thread on some things and pressure test certain ideas. The key is making sure that you're anticipating why this might not happen as opposed to having happy years and saying, oh, it's going to happen. Well, I'm a fan of, prudence. If we're running a forecast, I'd much rather threaten death and deliver pain than overextend myself and then uh, get exposed.
100%. We have a few questions still, but I did see Clenot come through with a question. So she said, in high stake deals, multi-million dollar ones, many around me get involved emotionally. When the deal fails, the mess comes. I avoid now in my scale phase as I'm emotionally always detached, can manage around 9 million, etc. This is an experience matter, or I don't know. Summer experience seniors, where am I failing?
I'm sorry. So, what is the question?
So it seems that in high stake deals, especially like really big multi-million dollar ones, a lot of people get involved emotionally around the deal. And
Yeah.
that's when it kind of fails and it becomes a little bit messy for her. Now she has removed herself from being in that emotional part of the deal. So she completely detaches. But some experienced senior people are still falling within that emotional kind of mess. So is there anything that she can do to aid that or help throughout the process, throughout the selling process?
Yeah. And thank you for repeating it. I don't know if we're talking about internal people to, your peers who get emotional or clients, but so let's just address both. As soon as a deal goes into the forecast, guess what? Everybody wants to help. There's a lot of help, especially on a 7 or an 8 figure deal. You'll get help from people you never heard of, but boy, they're not doing anything. And so you've got a deal, they want to jump on it. I worked for IBM uh, for almost 10 years as well. So I understand how the dynamics of some of these deals work. I don't think you can totally separate yourself from the emotions, but I do think that you have to be able to manage them. So if we're talking about internally, when you're doing your forecast calls and you're sharing information about a deal, speak the facts. this is really important when you're talking to investors. Senior people, we can see bullshit a mile away. Forgive my candor. But now's not the time to, have happy years and pretend that things are happening. If there's risk, call it out. Where there's help needed, call it out. If an executive is suggesting, oh, let me help you on something, put the mirror up and ask, how do you think you can help? Because I was always very, very protective. I would always bring senior people in to help me with a deal. And the primary reason was if it did fail, they were in the boat with me. I never did things on my own. I did things on my own, forgive me, I did things on my own where it was risk-free. But as soon as a deal got to a certain stage, I would always bring executives in. And that way we won or lost. Now I'll flip it to the emotional side of customers. The reason that customers get emotional is not because the deal failed, it's because they're not going to enjoy the benefits of the outcomes that were being promised. And this was my greatest frustration through my career. I would watch deals fail, and you just see a lot of deals. I was a VP of sales at IBM and HCL, so I'd see a lot of deals, and I'd see deals get pulled off of the forecast, and I knew that the customer was not deriving the value that was being promised. And I remember one particular deal that I got involved with where I got to choose my words not to disclose too much information, but it was a telco that had merged, and there was an integration requirement that was costing the organization about $50 million a year. But the people who were running the project were afraid of the visibility that would be incurred if they escalated this problem. Nobody wanted egg on their face for how they got to this position. And the rep contacted me and they said, look, the deal failed. We're not going forward. They're not doing anything. I said, wait a second. Find me the name of the people who are going to own the decision. We finally did that on a Saturday morning. I called the individual. He picked up. He was at his kid's soccer game. I said, you don't know me from Adam. Here's the situation. You're leaking $50 million a year. He said, Mark, I'm at my kid's soccer game. Let's talk Monday. 3 weeks later, we had a $4.5 million deal signed. It comes down to if the problem is we're spending money to solve, are we communicating it in a way that matters? And that's, again, this is what I just do with all of my coachees, whether it's a 15-minute call or it's a monthly advisor plan. Um, I love to get emotional about deals because it shows my humanness and my vulnerability. And the closer you can get to the customer, they're going to be emotional. So I make a habit of shifting proverbially, proverbially moving from one side of the table across from the customer, vendor customer, I go right next to them and I help them buy to achieve their outcomes. That's always worked for me.
Yeah, you're a direct extension of them and their business, and
That's
they
exactly
feel
right.
it through and through.
And
Um,
by the way, they don't buy your solution as much as you sell it. So they really do want to help. They do want your help, but they're not going to admit that until you've demonstrated some credibility, demonstrated that you've helped others do what they want to do, and you're here to help them, but they have to engage you. So you have to earn that trust.
yeah. And we actually have a comment question from Lola. She said, thoughts from Mark on this stat. Only 2% of women receive VC funding for their business. She'd like any thoughts, maybe any advice
Yeah.
on this side.
So Lola, uh, my daughter, when she graduated from college, I have two professional women as daughters. My youngest daughter called me and she said, "Dad, I want to be a venture capitalist for a career." And I said, "Wow, where are you going to get the capital to do your ventures?" She kind of had it right. She wanted to participate in a lot of deals. And now she's a rock star at Google, and she chose another path. But the reason I bring that up is that her motivation was she had heard a similar statistic, and she wanted to be one of the uh, female-run VC groups that are um, empowering women-owned businesses. And I'll just share with you what I found in joining Hubble. There's a number of those. And, uh, the patriarch is what it is. It's not going away. Um, if you think of a river and a big boulder in the middle of that, and that's the patriarch, you can you can beat your head against that rock till you're a mess, or you can become the water and flow around it. That's a Bruce Lee Taoism uh, mentality. And all I'll suggest to you is don't go to the wrong VCs anymore where you're seeing that behavior. There's a lot of women-run venture capital firms and investors. Go onto the Hubble platform, look for those investors. Um, Bettina is one that comes to mind. Karina is another. I see them all the time. So I would welcome the opportunity to help you, Lola, but I think there's other experts that are going to be better partners for you to
Yeah,
find money, to find money.
yeah, yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more women-led events in the future that will introduce you guys to, and thanks, Lola, that will introduce you and give you a little bit of a soft introduction into conversations with the women that are funding. Bettina always is number one. She always comes to mind because she's extremely active. She's ex-GoPro, was there for basically her entire lifetime, and now is just funding companies. She's on board. So definitely a lot of opportunity in the follow-up email that everybody will get. Will include some of that for you, Lola, a few profiles that might benefit. And I'll pop in the chat in a minute our Luma event calendar so that you guys can follow along. And we will be having some more women in VC events where we will invite you all. Okay, so Umang has a question. Let's see. At an early stage, most VCs look at team market fit before investing. How does a bootstrap solo founder solve the team chicken and egg problem to position themselves better for investment?
I
I think
I'm so Go ahead.
Mark might add on this one because I just came from this. Not even from a VC perspective, but when you're selling to the customer, this founder market fit idea was pretty new to me. And I didn't have it at all going into, I'm selling in construction and I have no background in construction. Um, it was recommended on one of these fireside chats, the book, The Mom Test. That book really helped solve it for me because I just started having conversation after conversation where I could speak their language. And so I made it my goal to try and have 3 conversations with industry professionals. And that maybe for a VC doesn't solve the founder market fit problem, but in terms of being able to speak the language of the customer, it's just having conversations. And that's helped me a
So
ton.
this is the book that Ben's mentioning, and I would recommend the author is Rob Fitzpatrick. I've recommended this along with another book, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mahan Khalsa. And then, as I mentioned before, the third leg of that stool is my own book. I'm not here to sell books, but there's a problem to be solved here. It's called When Deals Go Quiet, and you can go on Amazon to find that. Um, Ben, when you're talking to investors, which is holding them back more? Product market fit, vendor market fit, or uh, commitment to revenue execution?
Um, so I've started some conversations with people who might invest in the future, but I'm not looking for funding at this point.
Okay.
So I'm talking about on the customer side, them acknowledging that you speak their language. But on the VC side, I've heard on all of these conversations the importance of founder market fit. Ohad, I think, was somebody who talked about that a lot. And I had a conversation with him. He also advised that if you're going to get funding, you need to have some kind of background in the industry. And so he advised I need to spend time and energy finding a co-founder who's had that experience. And
Yeah.
so this is the chicken and egg problem. But yeah, for me, it's one day at a time. It's learning enough about the industry so I can kind of finesse in, and then maybe I'll become that, I'll naturally have that founder market fit.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add, don't always go the VC route right away. Talk to angels.
Yeah.
Angel investing is so underrated. Everybody thinks VC, VC, VC. But when you speak to angels and they have connections, and I think this is a really good time to kind of also bring that in terms of like why Hubble exists and the problem that we solve for. Usually, expertise historically has been trapped behind giant firms, so like VCs, expensive retainers, closed networking, gate kept networks, people that don't have time to take these calls. So founders now more than ever obviously need to move fast. So people that are having those issues with connecting with VCs, and here's a misconception also about how people utilize Hubble. If you go on the platform and you start to have a conversation, rather than starting by pitching people anything and just being more inquisitive around what the problem that you're facing, what you're looking for, maybe speak a little bit about what you're working on, you would be surprised. People have gotten funded, they've gotten connections made, their network worth has just increased exponentially. And the ability to quickly find someone who's lived through similar situations, who's experienced the same pain points and problems, or has portfolio companies that they've invested in who are, having those similar issues, they will be able to get you there faster and quicker. So to Mark's point, on the sales side, I think everybody has these issues. It's just reaching out to the right person and knowing how to tackle them and at what angle. Okay, so Mark, I guess to kind of wrap up the session, I didn't see any more questions come through, but please do ask any questions in the chat if you have anything for Mark or Ben. But what would you say are the kinds of problems that are ideal for short Hubble sessions with you or any expert on the platform?
Okay, so great question. So before I do that, what I want to do is I want to tie a couple things that we've just been talking about together because I think there's a theme here. So whether you're talking to an investor or you're talking to a customer, they're both there kind of with the same mindset. They're there to manage risk. That's what business is. It's risk mitigation. Nobody wants to make the wrong decision. So, to the question earlier about being so close to the deal where everybody's so emotional, the risk of making the wrong decision is insurmountable. It's a whole lot safer to do nothing than it is to take a risk, even though the gain might be significantly greater. So we, as founders, have to have the empathy for who we're speaking with. And if we're speaking with investors, why are investors talking to me? To make money. I remember going to Sequoia one time, a long time ago. They funded one of my customers or one of my employers, sorry, and there was a big sign. If it ain't the money, it's the money. These are organizations that see hundreds of pitch decks every day. They're looking at Tell me, what's your customer adoption plan? What do you have going today? How do you plan to execute on revenue? Because I need a return on investment. To Kat's point, I think you'll find a lot more flexibility with angels who are looking at founders, looking at vision, looking at, you know, am I putting money into the right place and we're going to grow together? When you're talking with customers, it's the same thing. It's all about managing the risk. So this was an incredible call where we were able to, talk about a bunch of different things, but it really does tie back to that. So, Kat, you asked me, what are the ideal calls for the short Hubble sessions? I got to tell you, they're all over the map, and I have so much fun with them. Um, as much as I try to tell people, please call me before a meeting, to prep for a meeting, to look for blind spots, to pressure test things. Invariably, oh, I got this. I got this first call. And after they've bloodied themselves in a mess of a meeting and they lost a deal, then they call me and say, what should I have done differently? That's so backwards. So one of the first things that I would encourage you to do is if you have meetings coming up, call me. Let's talk about how to prep for them so that you're going to speak you're going to use terms that matter. You're going to help them. I'll show you how to do signals based analyses so that the company that you're going to go meet with, you can go online and look for signals that might show a propensity to have an interest in your solution. Have they opened up new headcount for what you do? Have they recently hired somebody? If it's a public company, do you know how to read a 10Q or a 10K about initiatives that they're doing? You're looking for signals as opposed to just ICP mapping. So those are things that I help with. These first calls might be, I'm nervous and I just need a sounding board. I just need to talk with somebody. That's great. Schedule time. Crafting win plans. Um, if a deal is stalling, yeah, you pick up the phone and you call me and let's talk about how we can de-risk it and reverse it. I've got several dozen deals in my career that were in procurement, directed to somebody else. One, the PO had been issued, but they've all been reversed and we've won. But I'll just promise you, nobody needs that pressure. I would much rather meet with you earlier in the sales cycle. So there's lots of reasons to engage me sooner for shorter calls. The Hubble page describes what I do, and if I can help anybody on this call, fantastic.
Yeah. And I guess, Ben, curious on your side, how you felt through these calls because you specifically have background and knowledge working with Mark. Would you do it again? Thoughts?
Yeah.
I'll block
Like
my
I
ears.
was, yeah, we're rating Mark's performance. No, like I said at the beginning of this call, like I love talking through things, and sometimes that's all it is. And especially with somebody who's an expert like Mark, he said, like it's just fun because it's all over the place. Like I'm doing this business by myself at this stage, and so to be able to talk to an expert about it makes it more fun, and you're going to learn things. Um, and so I think, yeah, mentorship is awesome. Mark, he's helped me draft emails, like even the simplest stuff, like um, you could tell there's delicate moments in an enterprise deal, and that's when I talk to Mark. Like, okay, I need to make sure I get this fine tuned before I send it out or before I go into a meeting. So, yeah, absolutely, a avid Hubble user for sure. So,
I was a computer science major with a English minor, so I love our language. And helping somebody craft the most poetic emails I just love doing it. So, Ben, I'm glad that that resonated.
yeah.
Yeah. We have 5 minutes left. To close out the session, I want to be respectful of both Ben and Mark's time. If there are any other questions, I think we have time for one more. I believe I saw Nikki. So Nikki, I don't know if this is something that we can address just on the call, but I'll throw out the question in case one of you guys can answer. So Nikki says, I'm a pre-seed one-time founder and today received an invite to submit proposal to Comcast. But even though I had an awesome connection with SVP, I'm afraid I might be too early for this opportunity.
I'm going to suggest that you go to Hubble and engage me and let me help you win this. And by the way, you're not a one-time anything. You're a first time.
Well, that
So
was supposed to be first.
yeah, we will help you advance this deal. We'll see if it can be won. If so, we'll put together a win plan to win it. You'll go do lots of these. You'll have a successful exit, and then you'll come back in a couple years and you'll say you're a 5X founder.
I just bought your book, so thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's really good. Anytime anybody speaks to me, I direct them to Mark's book. Mark, Ben, closing thoughts. We have 3 minutes. Anything else you guys want to chat about, close on the call for guests still on here?
Yeah. One thought on just the value of having these conversations for me. The way to summarize it is like, you can ask AI any question you want and get an answer. When I go into these calls, I don't know the right questions to be asking.
Right.
And that's been unlocked for me. So like I went into that first call thinking, how do I present these processes in a certain way so it resonates? And Mark's like, no, it's how do we draft the business case? So I think that's the awesome part about these conversations.
Parting thoughts. It's June 23rd. So if you're running a business that's quarterly driven, you got a week. Happy to help you close those deals so that they don't slip or stall indefinitely. I'm not anybody's manager. I'm only here to help advance deals. So please let us know if we can be of any assistance.
Yeah, we'll be sending out an email with all the books that were recommended. I'll ask Ben, Mark if they want to add anything else, so you guys have some goodies to click on. Post event, we'll be sending out a recording as well within 24 hours. I'll include Mark's LinkedIn and also his Hubble profile so you guys can stay connected. Mark sends wonderful sales emails that I read every single time when they come in through my inbox. Very eloquent, and you can see that he puts quite a bit of time. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ben. I love these types of stories. They're very practical and real. I feel like everybody kind of has these similar pain points within different industries. And I think as a founder, it's always a business problem, and finding expertise quickly and applying it immediately to help everything move forward should really be the case, right? And this is why Hubble exists. We're so proud to have you as a Hubble expert. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You guys will receive communicators within 24 hours. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.